Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's special Valentine's Day Tech Talk. We're showing our love for the Tech Talk community with a great speaker today in Joe Lubin. Also, this is a first date for Tech Talks. We are collaborating on this webinar with the Paris Blockchain Society and have Patrick, who's come out to help me host this one. Also, given interest in the webinar, we are not only have the Zoom link, but we're also streaming on YouTube. So welcome to those of you who are joining that way. Quick thank you to Accenture for their support and sponsorship on these Tech Talks. The main thing in terms of logistics to just point out is, as usual, for those on Zoom, we have the Q&A tab open. So feel free as you're listening to ask additional questions or follow-up questions, and Patrick and I will work that into the conversation, especially towards the end. Patrick, why don't you come on out? Patrick is the founder and president of the Paris Blockchain Society, and he's going to kick off our conversation.
Hello, Peter, and thank you very much for this introduction. I'm Patrick Bouffartigue, the founder and president of the Paris Blockchain Society. We are a French community of blockchain and digital asset professionals, and we organize monthly, online, and in-presence international events to understand the major technical, business, and legal trends of this industry. I think now we can welcome Joe Lubin, and I will make short historical perspectives on our guest's background. Hello, Joe. Great to have you on the Tech Talk, and we are really happy to have you today. You are one of the most respected figure in the industry. I'd like in a few words to pay tribute to your work. You are the co-founder of Ethereum and the CEO of Consensys. Ethereum is an initiative of Vitalik Buterin in 2014, which you have joined as the co-founder to implement a revolution in the blockchain industry, which is the possibility to create decentralized applications on the blockchain through complex smart contracts. Today, Ethereum is the largest smart contract platform in the world, with more than 4,000 decentralized applications built on it. It is the Ethereum cryptocurrency, the second largest cryptocurrency by market capitalizations, with $300 billion market capitalizations. And the same year that you have started working on the Ethereum projects, you have started Consensys, to create tools and products to help users and developers build decentralized applications on Ethereum and help users interact with them. So among the different products that you have created are, of course, MetaMask, the leading self-custodial wallet with more than 100 million users, processing 250 daily transactions. You have also, with Consensys, built Infura, which is the leading products that help developers build and scale decentralized applications on Ethereum, with more than 400,000 developers using it. And more recently, last summer, you have launched Linea, which is solutions for the scaling challenge of Ethereum, a rollup, which allows to build up with 20x cheaper transactions. So in very practical terms, the current crypto industry wouldn't be what it is today without Ethereum, Consensys, and all your work. So it's an honor to have you today and to understand your perspectives on the current and coming state of the industry.
Right. Thanks you for having me. Thank you so much. So I think there's one critical piece of data or set of data that I should add to that list. We've had a Paris office for a very long time, very vibrant office, and our 800 people currently, and all through the years have always been bolstered by a very large France-based team. So in fact, the Linea project is heavily French.
Nice. Well, so maybe not at the beginning, but let's at some point we should get into your views on geography and where the hot spots in blockchain are going to be. But maybe at a very high level, Joe, you've got this amazing front row seat. What do you make of the sort of current bear market that we've gone through? How is it similar or different than other ones? And then maybe what does it take for the blockchain community to start coming out of this in a stronger position?
Well, if we're currently in a bear market, I hope it continues, and I hope we have lots of bear markets like this. I think in fact we're not really in a bear market anymore, and I think we haven't really been for quite a while. Although everybody was suspicious, and it took a long time for people to really feel the optimism, but it's definitely here. It might have felt like a bear market, might still feel like a bear market because the world is profoundly broken economically and geopolitically. So we had DeFi summer and NFT summer, which was a real breakout era for our ecosystem. And eventually the irrational exuberance faded. That coincided with the Federal Reserve in the United States starting to raise rates around March 22. So as we are all aware, that helped catalyze a very sharp drop from the highs of 2021 and 2022. So there was indeed a bear. Between June, December 22, Ether was around $1,000 for a while. Bitcoin down to around $16,000 US. But since that time, we've seen a slow melt up, a steady improvement in users and revenues. There was a bit of a dip last summer when things were quite slow, but it's been looking at the numbers, it's been quite positive. Really, in the last bear market, we recognized the difference between money crypto and tech crypto. Money crypto is the act of trying to separate people from their money. In some cases, it's good money crypto, where it's centralized institutions providing bridges to move into the decentralized protocol world for more naive people, less tech savvy people. And money crypto should be distinguished from tech crypto, which is all the people building out the decentralized infrastructure.
That one of your developers there on the desk?
Yes, this is Slilikoi, one of our French developers. She's a French bulldog developer, in fact. So in the last bear market, we all worked hard with minimal distractions. We don't have as many distractions as in a bull market frenzy. We worked on Ethereum hard forks. We landed the merge. We're about to land Deneb in Cancun, which will bring guaranteed data availability plentifully. And what emerged was layer 2 scalability, bridging between layer 1s, bridging among layer 2s, greater usability in wallets, account abstraction, embeddable wallet security took a quantum leap. A rich and agile staking ecosystem was facilitated by the transition from proof of work to proof of stake. So that's staking, liquid staking, restaking, liquid restaking. And the last bear market enabled us to really flesh out the foundations in terms of scalability, usability, and security. And that is enabling what could be described as real mainstream adoption, finally, of the decentralized protocol infrastructure. And we're going to see it emerge as systemically important infrastructure.
So the infrastructure keeps coming, keep developing, picking off sort of pain points.
We're still building layers and layers of the infrastructure, because that's what you need to do when you transform the entire planet's systems to sturdier foundations. But we are starting to cross the chasm into mainstream utilization.
So when maybe I just to probe one follow-up question on that, just the sort of the relationship though between this decentralized world that you're building and traditional mainstream finance. I think that you've seen more discussions around that lately. I don't know what you make of the ETFs for Bitcoin, potentially Ethereum coming. How do you see this relationship between mainstream finance and the DeFi blockchain world?
So it's interesting, and it's proceeding differently in different parts of the world. In most of the world, there's been fear, there's been excitement, there's been pretty rational acceptance of the potential benefits of the technology amongst just the citizenry as well as regulators, and there are legitimate attempts to try to make sense of this new paradigm. It's a new paradigm in trust, and try to figure out how the paradigm fits into the political philosophy of the particular nation or nations that are considering it. It fits in certain ways in China, perhaps. Fits in different ways in Argentina and Venezuela. Maybe less regulated there, but still utilized. Not sure it fits in North Korea currently. And in different parts of the world, in Asia, Middle East, Europe, it's being embraced quite well. In the United States, a country that likes to dominate the world through intermediaries, often financial intermediaries, the prospect of profound disintermediation could be seen by some to be a national security issue, and others could see profound decentralization as being consistent with free market capitalism and Western liberal democracy, and that debate is going on right now. We've had a major shot in the arm, both from the judicial system in the United States as well as grudgingly from a regulator, where essentially the SEC was forced to, by the courts, forced to approve Bitcoin spot ETFs. And that's going to be a watershed moment. On the first day, the Bitcoin spot ETFs flipped the SLV ETF, the silver ETF. They're sitting at around $30 billion right now. Massive inflows. I think in the last couple of days there have been $600 million in inflows, heavily into BlackRock and Fidelity, but the others are accumulating as well. I think GLD, the gold spot ETF, sits at around $180 billion, and a rise in price and increased inflows could see the Bitcoin spot ETFs challenge the gold ETF, and that's going to be a big news story. And it's essentially when you have lots of the biggest pool of capital in history, the largest bridges for capital to flow into our ecosystem that we've ever experienced. That's going to drive a regulatory shift in the US, as politicians and regulators will not be able to ignore or denounce crypto when all the voters, through their registered investment advisors, funds, including investment funds, and they're all invested in the asset class. With respect to the Ether spot ETF that's potentially coming in May, smart people would give it, say, a 60% chance of happening in 2024. There are reasons why the SEC might want to delay, deny. The Ether spot ETF is likely to be perceived as more challenging to the existing financial infrastructure, as the parallel financial system, or as a parallel financial system, because major financial firms will likely not have the same kinds of advantages in a more decentralized financial infrastructure. So at minimum, they're going to want to see delays so that they can pivot. There is convergence. We're seeing integration among systems. We're seeing wallets have credit cards and debit cards, and Gnosis Pay is a good example. MetaMask has an integration with Robinhood in the US. Gnosis Pay is available all throughout Europe. Stable coins are heavily being backed by US treasuries right now. And as nation states find it less exciting or safe to invest in or to lend money to the United States, we're going to see probably stablecoin companies become the largest lender to the United States. And so that's going to be a very interesting partnership. And we're going to see divergence. Even while we converge, as more and more people live and work in the blockchain space, as more applications come online, things like Farcaster, NFT phenomenon 3.0, 4.0, people will get paid in crypto and organize their lives in crypto. And while the legacy infrastructure needs to continue to service the older cohorts, the younger cohorts are going to be crypto native, and more of the global economy will be decentralized.
Patrick, thank you very much, Joe. Patrick, why don't I pass the baton to you for some follow-up questions?
Yeah, sure. And I'd like to zoom in on Ethereum and its upcoming upgrades and evolution. And it's quite today the foundation of a lot of the Web3 world. You mentioned a few moments before the scalability challenge of Ethereum. As Ethereum has become more and more popular, the congestion of the network has increased fees and the latency of the transactions. So this is currently one of the challenges that the industry try to tackle to increase its adoption. And of course, Consensys is also contributing to this with its rollup Linear. In the coming months, the Denken upgrade of the Ethereum blockchain is coming. What is it going to change for the role of Ethereum in the industry and for all the scaling solution and the ecosystems on Ethereum?
So Denkun is going to bring scalability, and let me back up a little bit and paint a larger context. So for millennia, we've operated under a top-down command and control trust paradigm. Trust flowed from authorities through intermediaries down, and that worked well in building a society. But increasingly, it's been not working so well for more and more people, maybe up to 99% of the people. And Satoshi Nakamoto, whatever that was, developed this new kind of database. It was intended to be a global system that would be directly inspectable, directly usable, directly upgradable, in a sense, if you generalize the notion, say, to Ethereum, to anybody in the world. And once you have a system like that, where all the transactions can be sequenced and inspected, and that is uncensorable and virtually impossible to overturn the history of, then you have a new potential foundation for trust on the planet. And so Satoshi invented decentralized trust, which is going to change everything. Upon a decentralized trust foundation like Bitcoin or Ethereum, we built decentralized finance, and we can now move into the mainstream economy and re-architect essentially all the systems on sturdier trust foundations. We have traded, layer one networks have traded scalability for this new kind of decentralized trust. The internet is very scalable. You can add machines to it and you get more transactions, more throughput. Layer one networks are not very scalable because the way the consensus systems operate, you can't just add new machines to it in order to increase performance. You get more security. And so what we've done is architect a system where essentially modularized, where you can have a security module and you can tease out an execution module where it can do all the transactions, and then you can tease out other modules for different kinds of data. And so these layer 2 networks, Linea is one of them, Arbitrum, Optimism, etc. They are enabling us to add transactions per second, scalability to the Ethereum network. And we're going to keep doing that over and over as much as we can. Denkun, the next hard fork, will enable us to have a lot more of what's called guaranteed data availability. This enables these layer 2 networks where most of the computation is going on now to store data in a certain way and be able to access that data so that they can prove to the layer 1s what actually happened in the transactions that they processed. This gives us essentially guaranteed trust or decentralized trust, and it gives us infinite scalability because we're going to be able to add more and more layer 2s. This is called horizontal scalability. We're going to be able to add layer 3s and layer 4s and layer 5s above those, and we're going to see essentially regions of virtual space develop, similar to how economies develop around towns and grow into cities and nation states. So we are on the way. We have vertical scalability in the sense that we can have more and more powerful machines, better and better algorithms, and horizontal scalability will enable us to add these new networks one at a time that will subserve more and more communities and more applications.
And thank you very much. And as we have more and more scalability solution, layer 2, 3, you even mentioned 4, the interoperability challenge might increase. And it is already today for a lot of Web3 users a challenge to navigate between all the different layers and to interact with the different decentralized applications. What type of solutions do you think will emerge from the markets when we will have more and more scalability solutions?
Yeah, so we we're in a moment of divergence. So we're gonna have these cycles of divergence and convergence repeatedly with respect to the technology. As we modularize and add more systems, more scalability, we are exploring the solution space of different kinds of solutions. If you look at the database world, there are a wide variety of classes of database and a wide variety of specializations within a class. So whether it's a SQL, NoSQL, vector, etc. The world is made of databases, and there's a huge number of different kinds. We need that sort of differentiation in the blockchain space, and so the current period of divergence enables us to explore what's out there and improve things, and that leads to fragmentation, which is I think one thing that you're hinting at. So fragmentation, as we modularize in Ethereum, as we create these layer 2s, etc., is a real issue, but it's necessary for us to move into that issue, necessary for us to move into and through a fragmentation phase. And it'll be fragmentation with respect to usability. You've got to bridge to these different networks in respect to liquidity. There are different pools of capital on these different networks. So in order to build a globally usable, scalable, and homogeneous system, we are going to have to come up with the solutions that bring the fragmentation into coherence. So first, fragmentation can be seen as a bug or a difficulty, but it's also a feature. It enables diversity. It is part of the definition of decentralization. Forking of open source, forking of running networks is a superpower of our ecosystem. It's great when something when somebody comes up with an idea and is able to build on the shoulders of giants, or even a community splits into and services the two communities better than one community that's fighting over an issue. So we should support that, yet we should all be talking together better and working together better. So as I said, complex systems have to be built in a modular fashion. You build a first approximation, you build divergent evolutions and extensions, and you bring them together. Currently, there are messaging and bridging systems that are functional, a little vulnerable at times, difficult technology. They will enable in time all the networks at various levels to come together into an experience that feels as coherent as the current internet. State channels is a technology that's been professed for quite a long time to be usable and profound, and it's about to have a very significant role in bringing these networks together. Justin Drake of the Ethereum Foundation's recently suggested that shared sequencing at layer 1 can serve as an important element, which will eventually solve the fragmentation problem. We at Consensys, our linear team, is working on a shared sequencer technology. There are other projects that are doing the same thing. And our own wallet, MetaMask, is constantly working to make it seamless to access all the tokens, all the dApps, all the networks the users care about via a uniform interface. And so we're constantly trying to level up the amount of abstraction that a user sees in order to access their tokens. So soon you won't be thinking about moving one token from a certain network to another network. You'll just
maybe I could follow up, Patrick. So Joe, stepping up a level. So as you said, the foundations, the capabilities are building out, period of a lot of experimentation. Are there particular applications, even tokens, that you're particularly find particularly promising in over the next year or two?
So it's still early, but there are real breakthroughs going on even as we speak. A little while ago, there was a bit of a frenzy on the Base network, and on the Linea network. Base had a project called Friend.tech. We had on Tomo, we had a similar one called Tomo, and these were platforms that enabled the gamification and monetization of social capital. So essentially, you could pay people to listen to you or engage in certain kinds of activities in a one-on-one or actually group context. So early excitement for these things. They're still pretty primitive. They enable you to monetize social graphs as opposed to what the legacy financial or the legacy technology world does, where they own your social graph and your identity and exploit them and your attention. And so we're going to see social graphs become owned by people. MetaMask has a Snaps plugin platform, and there are different snaps that you can use in MetaMask currently around establishing your decentralized identity. And then you can use attestations to say things about someone or somebody's behavior, something like that. Moving along that line of social graphs and social networking, a massive phenomenon is underway right now with Farcaster. Essentially, it's a Twitter replacement that's built with foundations on blockchain using optimism, and it's, I think it's got a real shot at sticking. It takes a much healthier approach to building a social network. It's more modular in its architecture. It enables channels and moderation, and so stay tuned. Fingers crossed. It will emerge
There are
a few
clearly
other things.
weaknesses. There are clearly weaknesses in Web2 social media. So that would be.
I hadn't noticed.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Maybe one follow-up question. So someone's asking on terms of the financial use cases that you talked about. How important is it going to be to do different things around confidentiality for some of those use cases, and how are someone's asking if those problems are getting well solved?
So privacy and confidentiality is critical to a healthy functioning species, I think, at least for the human species. And we have certain actors in certain nation states that feel like they should, for security or other reasons, be able to inspect every flow of value from source to destination. Many people disagree with this. Many organizations disagree with this. And so it's gonna constantly be a battle. It's been a battle for decades with different technologies, there's been some success by the people who want to control everything, essentially getting centralized exchanges to delist privacy tokens. Bit disappointing, but there are projects that will work hard to protect privacy. We should be able to interact in zero knowledge in virtually everything we do, without being worried that there is some sort of backdoor that it could be used nefariously by certain actors. Once there is a backdoor, there will always be people looking to inappropriately use that backdoor to inspect or to control. But the technology is strong, and my sense is the technology will move fast in a fragmented and decentralized way, so that would be hard for slower regulators to keep up with it.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about infrastructure and technological innovations, one of the current narrative and solution that a lot of people are looking at regarding better user experience is account abstractions and intent-centric applications. How do you see these innovations play out in the coming years, and to what extent do you think it will help solve the user experience challenge in the ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think we're in the middle of a revolution in how wallets operate and in how transactions will operate in our ecosystem. Wallets started very primitive and have gotten increasingly capable with increasing tooling for security. But there's a trade-off between security and usability. I can put something in a cement box and bury it. It'll be very secure, not very usable. And that's something that we face regularly at MetaMask. So we are hyper-focused on security, and there's bleeding edge technology for well-established and continually bleeding edge technologies that we're making use of to keep users safe. Yet, as different kinds of applications and games are another that are about to explode on blockchain, all these applications need to enable people to make use of the technology. Otherwise, there's no benefit in the technology if only a few people can use it. And so we're going to see account abstraction. We're going to see a lot of different approaches to embeddable wallets. We're going to see progressive security, progressive onboarding, and we're looking for ways to make that very smooth, where you can have a wallet established for you. You can make use of that. You can maybe add a password to that, then you can add more secure elements as you're more and more invested financially and in other ways in using it. With respect to intents, that's essentially moving from a world in which you're choosing to buy something specific at a specific price or swap something specific for something else specific at a specific price in a specific place, to just putting out an intent to acquire something under certain parameters. And that's RFQs. That's the way a lot of the world works, and that introduces a lot more flexibility. So there are architectures out there, UniSwapX and others that are starting to operate that way, setting up multi-party markets, different kinds of actors and different kinds of ways. We have our own version of that it's definitely built out and will be launched at some point. So that's the direction of travel.
So Joe, I think you're doing an interesting job of talking to both about how the industry is evolving, and again, when you talk about what Consensys is doing, but maybe just to make that a little more explicit, what's the what are the key priorities at Consensys in terms of encouraging adoption here? How do you prioritize individual versus traditional business adoption? And just from a Consensys point of view, how do you see your role in the ecosystem currently?
So we see our role as stewards of the ecosystem, and we're building businesses, and we are progressively decentralizing those businesses or those products. So we have been for a long time heavy participants in the research and development of the Ethereum protocol. We've built multiple execution clients and one Consensys network client. So currently Besu and Teku are our Ethereum clients, and they're well utilized and growing, fortunately, in utilization. We have run a few of the pillars of in use by both developers and end users for a number of years. So one has been Infura. Infura has enabled software developers to access the blockchain, reading and writing, for a long time. Infura is on a path to decentralize itself. We'll have some announcements in Denver in a couple of weeks, where it is evolving into what we're calling the decentralized infrastructure network. And that's going to enable software developers to permissionlessly deploy the backends of their own applications via this network of backend service providers. Infura itself is one of these layer 2 modules that is decentralizing itself. So it's in the process of decentralizing Sequencer. It's going to be working with at least one other layer 2 to decentralize the proving mechanisms, or to enable multiple provers to serve as bridges to layer 1. That's part of the uniformization and homogenization that we need at layer 2. So that's going to take a few years to get to that point. But we need layer 2 to look like layer 1, in the sense that there are lots of clients cooperating and competing to produce something that's generally usable and not too fragmented. MetaMask is the most heavily utilized non-custodial wallet in our ecosystem, and it is also moving in the direction of greater decentralization. It does so via permissionless innovation first, meaning that we have a Snaps plugin architecture, so people can build into MetaMask, and we're going to have ways to make that more and more permissionless and more integrated with the MetaMask application. So anybody can now, using MetaMask Snaps, they can deploy a front end or release a front end that we can't stop. We don't want to be censoring those things. And so anybody can build their front end, deploy MetaMask, build their back end, deploying decentralized infrastructure networks soon, and gets all the gatekeepers out of the way for the decentralized protocol ecosystem.
Okay, Joe, Patrick, we have a whole bunch of great questions coming in. Maybe I'll turn over to Patrick in just a second. Maybe I could just ask one last question before Patrick takes on the Q&A. Just you've talked obviously about sort of the regulation, some of those pressures coming in. Where you personally has your views on the right balance between regulation and getting out of the way and allowing the innovation? Has that evolved much? Where do you stand today in terms of views on, to what extent can regulation play a constructive role and where in this thing?
Self-regulation would play a great role. We're not very good at getting that organized in our ecosystem, unfortunately. We're not bad, and I think we'll get better and better. Regulators have a tough time figuring out how powerful, exponentially evolving technologies, overlapping technologies ramify amongst their citizens and their systems. Do we need some regulation from regulators? I think it's helped over this past darker period where regulators, having been quite deficient, finally stepped in to some degree and went after some of the bad guys, in a sense, people who'd been coloring way outside the lines and harming people quite significantly. And so that's been good for our ecosystem. We cleared out a lot of the CeFi rot, and that's going to prove to be enormously valuable to sort of normalize our technology, enable us to clean up the narratives, which were just false narratives. It wasn't really people in our ecosystem doing bad things as much as it was people who were interested in exploiting other people and making use of our technology to do bad things. So if they were really interested in decentralization, they'd be building decentralized things that wouldn't harm people. So maybe we need some more regulation, maybe not. I would argue, let's say in the AI space, that's going to be really hard to figure out. In the US, they're thinking about maybe limiting the amount of computation a single AI project could have, which is crazy and wrong. But maybe regulators will overreach in ways, as the SEC has done, and force people to more rigorously decentralize their projects. So you can imagine the SEC has caused people to think about how to rigorously full stack decentralize their decentralized application or their protocol. And maybe in the AI space, we will have what I think is really needed, some really strong drive to making sure that the foundations of AI are decentralized in terms of implementation, in terms of the hardware, the data, etc., broadly owned and transparent. So regulators, if you're going to spend some time regulating stuff, maybe push AI over in a decentralized direction.
Patrick, over to you.
Okay, so I think we have a few questions from the public, and one of them has my attention because I think it's a question that is in a lot of minds at the moment. It's from Gabriel. Could you comment about the concentration of ETH on staking and restaking protocols? Are they a threat to the ecosystem?
So I don't know if they're a threat to the ecosystem. And we've been having discussions to that effect. So there's approaching 30% of Ether staked currently. And there's a bunch of liquid staking going on. And my guess is that staking will grow pretty significantly. I've heard people use numbers like 60% eventually, maybe even higher. I think that's reasonable. I think some good systems are being built. I think people will at times vote with their feet. We've seen that with mining pools over the years in different protocols, where the numbers get too high, it doesn't remain tolerated for very long, and people just move to other systems. I think there's a tremendous proliferation of different approaches, both in liquid staking, now restaking, and now liquid restaking. And so I'm hoping that there will be many different opportunities of different natures, so we get diversification, and that all the ether and liquid and restaked versions will spread out over lots of different applications, so that if there is a fail in one area of the ecosystem, it doesn't cascade and cause a contagion. We're building the thing in real time while all the airplane or rocket ship is flying, and a lot of smart people need to be very vigilant right now. We tend to rush into things, and fingers crossed this thing will not be like it's a lot of people on one side of a market, but it's like a lot of people are moving into the foundations of a new sturdy technology. So I wish I could give you a more certain answer, but it's underway and it's moving rapidly.
Another question is about enterprise adoption. It's true that we have talked a lot about retail adoption and retail application. How do you see enterprise adoption in the coming years, e.g., with DAO tooling in the traditional enterprise organizations?
Yeah, so we at Consensys are thinking a lot about that. How do we take our operating framework, which are composed of different kinds of important meetings and different team topologies and different decision-making mechanisms, and how do we move all of that smoothly on chain? So that doesn't mean we decentralize our organization. It does mean that we move the mechanisms on chain, and some things will end up being progressively decentralized as we admit more and more stakeholders into the Consensys company, essentially, in the Consensys ecosystem. So my belief is that many traditional companies won't be able to make transitions like that, and it just won't make sense, and they'll have users that need to be serviced in traditional ways, and that's great. But there will be more and more usable tools for companies to get a little more hybrid, and there'll be many companies that grow into what you just called enterprises that are pretty natively decentralized. So we used to use the term enterprise to refer to legacy companies, traditional financial companies and others, and now we use the term enterprise to refer to things like Aave and Compound and Farcaster.
Nice. Jumping around a bit, so David asks about your perspectives on the tokenization of real-world assets, such as some interest in that area, and to what extent is Consensys looking to play a role in that? He's asking.
Yeah, so we used to have a rallying cry very early on, tokenize all the things, and so that was a recognition that there are many digital assets in the world, increasingly. Weren't as many back then. Obviously, those are tokenized, but there are many physical assets. So from things like cars to real estate to diamonds to wine to my nation state identity, to my self-sovereign identity, to elements of my reputation. All of these things can and should have decentralized form. So we often call those things digital twins, where you can have something like an NFT represent the state or have controls over these different physical things. So if you own a condo and you want to Airbnb it, then you could potentially enable somebody to lease it through your NFT, and you could set up admission for 1 week period and various other things. So the world is moving increasingly in that direction. Maybe one of the most interesting real world assets I talked about already today, where I think it's called TBDT or something like that, where essentially US Treasuries are being tokenized. I think it's STBT, short-term Treasury bond token. And so that particular real-world asset is now available for use to collateralize stablecoins. We'll see more and more of that, and we'll see many tokens being traded for tokens. Many real-world asset tokens being traded for real-world asset tokens. In a world where things are ubiquitously tokenized, we might see a lot more barter because you won't have to trade a cow for a barrel of oil. You can trade those tokens directly, and you won't need money to intermediate and facilitate that transaction. So less money, more tokens.
Very good. Patrick, any of these good questions calling to you particularly?
Well, I think we've asked a bunch of them. Maybe Joe, if you want to take a few minutes to add anything you'd like to share with our audience on your perspectives for 2024.
Just one I wanted to come back to from the opening, if you don't mind. Where as this on the supply side of building this ecosystem, location. That's our classic INSEAD question. Obviously, US traditionally is a powerhouse in a lot of tech. It's a little more complicated in this, as you've alluded to from time to time. Curious where you sort of see the hot spots of development are, a little bit maybe on the strength of the US in this, and how, to what extent do you see the activity spreading out around the world, and if so, where do you find interesting places for you to hang out and talk to people?
Yeah. So appropriately, the decentralization movement has been decentralized from very early on. It started relatively small with Bitcoin, and started to pick up steam. So I got involved in early 2011, and by 2012, there were lots of projects saying, "Hey, this new invention of decentralized trust is pretty smart. Applying it to money makes sense, but shouldn't we apply it to everything?" And a bunch of projects formed and proposed different ways of adding functionality to blockchain systems. And Vitalik was, in my opinion, the best formulation. That was all happening all over the world by then. So that was in hacker squat houses in Romania, and it was in New York and London and Paris, and not a lot in the Middle East early on. Asia started to catch up a little bit later. South America, Africa caught up later. But there were hotspots, and we knew those people in different places starting back then. There are places that are more technologically advanced. Silicon Valley was one of those. Interestingly, that caused it to not jump into our space all that strongly because they were the masters of the universe and they owned all the identity and all the technology and so some of them jumped into the Bitcoin space, but it was slow for both Bitcoin and Ethereum adoption. There were pockets, but much slower than you would expect from Silicon Valley. But happily, it's been pretty decentralized, and let's hope the decentralized protocol ecosystem remains decentralized. We need to be constantly vigilant because as we keep developing, there will always be opportunities and vulnerabilities that either smart actors or nefarious actors will try to take advantage of for either money or power. But we've got to be very vigilant, very sensitive, hypo-allergic ecosystem. So our ecosystem sees vulnerabilities even when they aren't there, and people yell loudly and make sure they're not exploited.
Very nice. Yeah, so as Patrick was saying, any sort of closing thoughts? Your enthusiasm for the decentralization seems unbowed.
Definitely. So I'm an optimist, and I think it makes sense to be pretty optimistic, even as confusing and dark as things can seem right now. We are at the end, the very dynamic end of a super cycle. So I think of it in two ways: as an 80 to 100 year generational super cycle. So Strauss and Howe have written some books on that theory, where essentially 4 generations repeat themselves in a certain pattern. The first generation comes out of a very difficult situation, comes up with a new insight, drives a new system of the world that gets built, gets accelerated by the second generation. The third generation lives off of it and starts to find cracks and starts to exploit things, and essentially the world has gotten so complicated and exploitable at that point that it all careens into a brick wall, and a new insight and new system of the world is required. So we're in the fourth generation right now, and that maps nicely onto monetary systems. So the current monetary system is long in the tooth and needs a rescue or a new monetary regime needs to be developed. It just so happens that there is one in the background that has been developed, and at least the technology might end up being utilized by nation states. So we'll see how that goes. But if you're a young person right now, it's confusing, but it's probably one of the best times to be coming up because the amount of growth is going to be astonishing. And with this technology, I'm very confident that we will build a better system of the world.
All right. Well, sadly, we are coming to the top of the hour. So first of all, Patrick, thank you tons for the collaboration on this. It was a real pleasure. And Joe, really a privilege to have had you here. Thank you so much for taking the time. And just wishing everyone a fabulous Valentine's Day.
Great. Thanks, sir. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. Take care, everyone.